one of the quotes that I saw you said about Sam is that he screams 15-year NHL defenseman. So let's start there. When you see him against his own age group, you just kind of remember how dominant he is. I think we're going to see that again, but I want to ask you just about how he performed in London, getting heavy usage on a very veteran team that made an OHL championship run this year.
And maybe a year earlier, an OHL championship run. Talking to Mark Hunter, the manager in London, he thought that next year might be the year where they were better positioned. But Sam, going all the way back to playing in the GTHL U16, he always had this kind of on ice, poise and command in the game that said, "Hey, I'm here and I'm just going to play the game." And I remember last year in the U17, he made a mistake early in the game and it led to a goal. And, young players sometimes can get affected negatively by that. But Sam just kept playing. He just said, "Okay, it's a mistake." Players don't try to make mistakes, but you learn from them and you don't want to repeat them. And certainly Sam, I don't think Sam is going to be one of those big, huge offensive producers, but he's going to be one of those 20-minute-a-game players that are going to be instrumental to winning and instrumental to success. One thing I've learned about Dale Hunter and the London Knights is that when you play that much as a 60-year-old defenseman, it's not because we like you, because we know that you do like them. It's because you're able to help the team be successful. And you do it in a way, and the development, you look at this year with Sam Dickinson and Oliver Bonk, two rookie defensemen in London, on a team that you just been pushed all the way right to the OHL championship. It's really, really impressive. Now let's fast forward and think about how good they're going to be this coming year. I say this often about defensemen like Sam. They lower coaches' heart rates behind the bench. They lower their stress levels. There's a sense of comfort when they're out on the ice that everything is going to go well. And that is a valuable commodity. And I think Sam has that in significant areas. And one of the other things that I've always liked about Sam is that he's going to continue to expand his game, but he's not going to do that at the expense of hurting his team or himself in other areas. He really is a well-rounded, complete defenseman. And, maybe I'm underestimating the offense. And when I say offense, I see him as a 40, 50-point guy in the NHL, just not that 80-point player. I don't want to suggest that he's a 20, but that's what I see him as. But somebody you want on the ice, all the time or as much as possible.
Yeah, it was really interesting in London this year. So I'm from London. I got to see a fair few games live, and like you said, it kind of looked like the window might be next year to make that championship run. But with Cowan, with Bonk, with Dickinson, even with Barkie, you were watching them develop as they went further in the playoffs. So people were kind of wondering, especially, Leafs fans, when they picked Cowan in the first round, the production wasn't maybe there in the regular season, but it came when it mattered in the playoffs. So it was kind of ridiculous to see, they kind of got better as the playoffs went on. And I think Henry Mews, who's the next person I want to talk about, although Ottawa obviously didn't go as far, you kind of saw that too, where, by the end of the season, he looked absolutely, poised on that blue line, running second power play, for example. So yeah, like similar situation to Dickinson on a good team, relied upon in all situations by a veteran coach, again, and Dave Cameron. So with Mews, I'm interested, how do you think he'll fare in this tournament and next season with that added bonus of first power play time?
Henry Mews with Mews, right? Well, and I just want to make a quick comment about Dale Hunter and Dave Cameron. Okay, so we just talked about Sam Dickinson and a little bit about Oliver Bonk, who was Philadelphia's second first-round pick in the 2023 draft. But again, I'm going to talk about Dale and Dave. Like, the reason you get to play that much and play is because you're capable. They're not just putting you out there because, like you have this profile and, you've been a top kid. You're going out there to help the team win. And I think that when I watch, and you just mentioned Easton Cowan just a little bit, right? I watch coaches, how they use players. They tell you as much about how good the players are as anybody, how they use them. And so Sam Dickinson's playing a lot. Easton Cowan's playing a lot. Henry Mews is playing a lot. I can only say this, is that those coaches believe in those players because they can perform. Henry, to me, watching him, there's not a lot of flash and dash to Henry's game, but boy, is there a lot of substance to his game. The ability to, again, I talked about Sam, how they just lower coaches' heart rates, keep the stress level down, increase your comfort level. That's what Henry does in a little bit different way. He's not as big as Sam, maybe not as powerful, but the puck moves. His mind is so good in understanding what has to happen in any situation on the ice. The game happens quick. The game happens fast. You're under pressure. Well, Henry handles that pressure. He handles the forecheck. He handles the different challenges. He knows where his outlets are. That's as a 16-year-old defender in a really challenging league on a really good team. I mean, his progression level is just, it's upward, and it's only going to get that much better. He's got a top-notch coach in Dave, and certainly the confidence that Henry gained this year on a really good team is certainly going to help him as he moves not only to this Hlinka-Gretzky tournament, but into his draft year. And Ottawa's not ready to take a step back. James Boyd and Dave Cameron aren't ready to say they're ready to go after it again, and they got some really good young players, and Henry on the blue line. I find this, Kyle, a lot of times, and I hear it from scouts, oh, yeah, he didn't really wow you. A defenseman's job isn't to wow you. Paul Coffey wowed you, and Erik Karlsson wows you, and we know how Cale Makar wows you, and that's their game. But defensemen there to make the right plays in the right situations at the right times. That's what Henry Mews does. So don't overlook the brilliance and the hockey sense and the processing ability of Henry Mews and defenders like him, because they're incredibly valuable.
In Dickinson and Mews, they're both defensemen with some subtlety to their game that, yeah, maybe it takes a more experienced eye to truly appreciate them. But with Zayne Parekh and Saginaw, I mean, he broke a nearly 40-year-old record, 20 goals as a 16-year-old. What I want to just ask you about is just about, I mean, we saw it with Mintyukov last year in Saginaw when they're playing that free-flowing offense, and you're the defenseman's behind the net, making plays behind the net. How do you think that benefits a young defenseman like Zayne?
I think number one, he comes in and they wanted him to work on different parts of his game, but not take away the strength of his game. At the U17, going back to the U17, which I think is an incredibly valuable tournament, because I think there's three things that happen with these young players. They come out of U16, they're top picks, they're expected to come in, and now they've been really good players on their U16 teams, and they've shown that they're capable. Then that's the first part. Then they step into the OHL and they, oh boy, things are faster, the players are bigger, and the players are better. And that's what happens with an uphill progression. And that's what you have to continue to meet the challenges as you move up the levels. Then you go to the U17 tournament, you're back in your age group. You have the benefit now of understanding what junior hockey is all about, or the next level of hockey is all about. And I find that when they come back from that U17, now they're ready to take that another step up again. And I think those are the three stages that really help the player, obviously in their U16 year, draft, OHL, and then coming back after the U17. Zayne came into the U17 and, he did the things he needed to do, but then he asserted himself. And as you're watching the U17 tournament, much like the way he played in Saginaw, it again, just upward, dynamic, shoot the puck, jump into the attack, make the right decisions, make the right choices. That's what he did. And then he comes back to Saginaw and he builds on that. And he never let up. And the confidence that you gain, it can be humbling when you come in as a top player into the OHL. And now you're saying, oh boy, this is hard. And that part of going to the U17 and taking what you learned, helps you gain that confidence back and then come back with that confidence. And that's exactly what I saw with Zayne. And, the fascinating thing for me, and I talked to Dave Drinkle about this at the U17, they draft Michael Misa. And because they drafted Adam Fantilli, who didn't sign, they're able to draft Zayne because of that compensatory pick. I mean, you get a dynamic offensive player, really a foundational player in Michael Misa, and then you get somebody on the back end like Zayne. I mean, that's how your team, runs and really runs in a significant way. But his skating ability, and the other thing I love about Zayne is when he recognizes that opening, he's decisive. He doesn't hesitate. He's into the play, but he's not doing it just all the time. Like, he's really understood the balance between understanding, hey, I got to be decisive and jump, or I got to be decisive. It's not the right time. And that's what good defensemen do. And I think Zayne's projection is certainly as a top 3 defender in the National Hockey League, even a top pair defenseman, because some of the things that he does are very special.
What I find interesting about Zayne is 20 goals, and I talked to him and he says, I'm a playmaker. Like, he's not a shoot first defenseman, but he said, looking for just those little gaps, or looking, through traffic is another layer that he added to his game that's just made him that more dangerous. I want to move on to Windsor. They've got 2 players on this team, Anthony Cristoforo, who we were speaking about earlier, and Liam Greentree. So, another situation in Windsor. They just made a run, but with these 2 young, talented guys, they're ready to gear up and go for it again. That's an insane privilege. How do you feel about these 2 guys and what they're going to bring to Team Canada?
Let's stay on the defense here, and let's stay with Cristoforo. And Mark Savard, who's moved on to the Calgary Flames. Mark is such a creative person. He was creative as a player. He allowed creativity as a coach, imagination, and he encouraged it. So if you come in and you're Cristoforo, right, and Mark says, no, you got to play your game. You got to do the things that this is what we want you to do. That helps a player grow his confidence. That helps a player understand, hey, I'm here to do the things that I do really well. And again, we're talking about a 16-year-old player on a really, really good team in Windsor. Let's forget about what happened in the first round of the playoffs. That happens to teams. We've seen it happen to good teams in the past. It happened to Windsor. But Cristoforo, as a young defenseman, was really good, running the power play, running the offense from that spot on the ice. And, one of the things, with Mark Savard, too, Mark was a gifted offensive player, and he was somebody that wanted the puck on his stick, but he also wanted that interplay with other players on the ice, and certainly on a power play and with a defenseman, you want that interplay. And so the things that he could convey in that regard to helping a young defenseman, play to his strengths, I mean, it's really beneficial. I've watched this tournament for years, Kyle, and a lot of times what I see going through it is that you got young players, young defensemen that have potential, but haven't been able to really show it, haven't really had the opportunity. So, they get back into their age group. These guys aren't like that. These guys are players that want to be frontline and have been really significant to their team's successes, early on in their career. Liam Greentree, I remember the first time I saw him play. I know he was not a first-round draft pick in the OHL, but I remember watching for the first time. It was like, whoa, it was like, wow, he has a lot of different attributes. I mean, he's big, he's powerful, he's skilled, he's assertive, he's competitive. And again, you just see this player that just kept growing and growing. And, as he gained more confidence, the coach gained more confidence in him. He became more productive. His confidence grew even further. He got more opportunities. By I'll call it the last quarter of the season, maybe last third of the season, I mean, he was a player that was significant for the Windsor Spitfires. Significant. I mean, we're talking somebody that not only wanted to be a difference maker, was a difference maker, was somebody that it's almost like he's like, geez, I think I can be good. And there's a difference between thinking you can be good and knowing you can be good. I think Liam's in that second part now. He knows he can be good, and he knows that he can impact the game in a lot of different ways with the style of game he has. And those types of big, strong, powerful, skilled wingers that are going to drive play and make things happen for your team and make opponents, leery to be out on the ice against them. Always valuable, incredibly valuable, and there's no question in my mind watching Liam. I'm excited like, I'm excited about all the players as you watch them and you watch them grow. I'm really excited to see how far he can go, because he might be very similar and a different style of player, but I'm using it in this regard. Jack Quinn, who was a first round 8th overall to the Buffalo Sabres, really good player, had to find his way, and then when he found his way, it was like, wow, and he's going to find his way in the NHL. I mean, he just, when you watch him, and I remember talking to James Boyd at the U17 in Medicine Hat and Swift Current, coincidentally, that, and he said, oh no, he's a great athlete. You're on the right track there. And I think Liam can, he might not be in that top group of players now for the draft, but when it's all said and done, he certainly has some of the attributes that could push him right into the top end of that draft. No question in my mind.
So the last question I have for you, last year we had a conversation and you told me to watch out for Nick Lardis. And obviously one of the draft's biggest risers, just an incredible second half to the season in Hamilton. I'm really excited to see how he continues to develop there. Can you give me a name to watch out for? Maybe someone who deserves to have their praises sung a bit more from the OHL this year?
Yeah, well, I just talked a little bit about Liam, and certainly Liam might not fit perfectly into that thing, but I'm going to go, and I'm going to leave the underage kids, because you look at Porter Martone, who's a really good player and was a really good player for Canada at U18. He's down the road, right? But it's hard, and I'm going to mention two kids here. And Ben Danford, another right shot defenseman. Like, you look at the blue line. Again, a player, and I think in Oshawa, they didn't have the firepower. They had to play a little bit more tighter. And I didn't think it allowed maybe Ben I think he recognized this isn't about Ben not being able to do it. I think he recognized that, hey, listen, I gotta just take a little bit of a step back and make sure that I take this part of the game. But when you watch the confidence that he has, and I think he's an intelligent player with lots of great skills that you're going to have to really pay attention to over the course of the year. I really believe that he has a lot of ability. And Cole Beaudoin and Barrie, you watch him play and you start to see these elements, these different aspects of his game. And I think that, he's another player gaining some confidence, and somebody that's bigger, somebody that's stronger. And I think that some of the bigger players, as they mature into their size physically and get comfortable with carrying that weight. And, we develop, when I say we, hockey develops the bigger player way better now. And there was a time where if you were big, just go crash and bang. If you weren't high-end skilled, we're not going to, so those two players, I think have a lot of opportunity to continue to grow in their game. I think their teams are going to be better. I think Oshawa, no question, is going to be a better team just because of younger players getting better, some more skill coming in. I think Barrie, if they get Edward Shala in there, like, I think that will really, really help the Barrie Colts be a better team. But they have some skill, and they're going to be a better. I mean, they were a solid team last year. And I think that I think this tournament's going to help Cole realize how good he can be. Because he might play a little bit of a different role, because there's a lot of high-end skill guys here. But I think that will also help him be assertive in those other areas of his game with his size. And he's just rounding. He's just starting to round into that area of comfort with his physical, with his size, and then the physical maturity and the confidence that comes with using it come into play. Those would be the two players. And and it'll be interesting for me. And, and I talked about Gabriel Dag, the goaltender, but, it'll be interesting for me to watch Ryerson too, because Ryerson, we've seen goaltenders, and like Dustin Wolf, he's been the best goaltender in his league for the last 4 years, 2 in the CHL, 2 in the American Hockey League, most valuable player in the American Hockey League this year. Devin Levi, another goaltender with Buffalo. You cannot underestimate how good goaltenders that might not have that 6'3" frame, but have a lot of ability. And I think Ryerson is another player that he's going to be closely watched over the course of this year, because he's going to be relied upon a lot in Mississauga, as he should be.
Craig, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. I'm so excited for the junior hockey cycle to start up again, and have fun in Czechia and Slovakia.
I will. Always a pleasure to chat with you, Kyle, and just a joy to talk about the future of these young players that are trying to chase. They're chasing their dreams. They're sacrificing in a significant way. They're going to represent themselves in the OHL so well. And to me, you're looking at the future of the NHL.